Story that we were talking about last week, and it continues to rumble out there, is the issue of the Herkimer County Jail. And we do have there are two Democratic candidates who are running. One of them is running against Legislator Kurt Ackerman in Little Falls. And they're saying that the jail would that Herkimer County would save money if it didn't build a jail and farmed out these prisoners, sent them to places like Onondaga County and Oneida County. Kurt Ackerman is a legislator there who says these guys have their numbers absolutely wrong. Kurt's on the line right now. Good morning.
Morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. So tell me, because they were really there was some doubling down going on over the weekend, and basically saying, no, our numbers are right. It is cost effective not to build the jail.
Well, Bill, they're using some of the numbers to support their narrative, but they're not adding all of them in. We could do outboarding first or inboarding, whatever way you want to go.
Well, let's start with sending them out. All
right, sending them out. Their numbers, they take the numbers of just outboarding, the ones that we're outboarding now, which is $90, $100 a day.
Yeah.
They're not factoring in the other half, which are some of the hard to place. I think the sheriff from Oneida County brought this up last week. I was out of town last week, or I would have called in.
Yep.
But there's some of those inmates that we would send out are hard to place inmates, so their rate goes up anywhere from 2 to 5 times the rate. They didn't add that in. They don't add in the fact that we have to run a 4-bed jail, which is upwards of $1 million. They need to add those numbers into that cost. They didn't add in the fact that, being that we're going to be sending these inmates all over the state, for several reasons, we're going to have to, whether it be weather-related, whether it be the fact that our assigned counsel can't get to see them, they have to ask for an adjournment. That adjournment's a 2-week turnaround at best, so we have to keep them in jail potentially at least 2 weeks longer, which we have to pay for. Our assigned counsel cost is $75 an hour. At least that's what it was. It may have changed over a few years. You got to add that cost in. All those costs they didn't add in at all to support the narrative that they're selling. I'm not saying you have to be for the jail or against it, but you have to have the right numbers, and all those would drive that cost up to at least double to triple the rate.
So you're saying they're basically using the numbers. They are using boarding numbers and correct boarding numbers, but they're not looking into or including any of the additional fees and costs that are a direct result of putting these prisoners in jails outside of Herkimer County.
Yeah, without a doubt. Then you also have you got your administrative costs they didn't add in that they're using out of the jail now, and that are supporting outboarding. The logistics and scheduling that you're going to have to do, all those administrative costs behind the scenes, they didn't add in any of that as well. And then if you go to a 4-bed jail, which I don't think the state's going to allow you, Board of Corrections are going to allow you to maintain that forever, but even if they do, then you're going to have to actually schedule people for transportation, because you and I know all people aren't sent to jail only 9 to 5.
Right.
All right. Well, that's an additional cost.
Here's Manaski with a question.
What is the running and operating a 4-bed jail? Can you explain that? You have to do that, and why is that?
Well, you have to maintain a certain. Well, the Board of Corrections will come out with what your staffing ratio has to be. They're probably going to have you maintain a 3 to 4 to 5 people on a shift, because you're going to have a person process them in, a person supervising, a floater. And then there's another one, whether it be a tower person or outside person. They can come up with any number they want, and it's a mandate. It's a state mandate that we have at jail. They want us to build a jail. I mean, they were pressuring us when we were looking at other engineers at one time to just try to save costs. They thought we were trying to delay the process, and they sent a pretty strong letter back to us, to push us in the direction we're going.
Can I ask one more thing on that? When you have a jail up and running, would you have to add additional staff that you don't have now to maintain that jail, and would that send up the cost of running,
This is interesting, because I think we talked about this over the weekend.
I wanted to address that too, because this is what they're doing. They're taking the jail that we have now, which is roughly a 7-to-1 ratio, according to our sheriff, for supervision. We're going to a pod system, which is about 32 to 36 to 1. So obviously the supervision portion, we would save staffing.
So you're saying with a new jail, you're saying it, instead of 7 to 1, so 1 corrections officer to every 7 inmates, it would be 1 corrections officer to how many inmates?
It can go up. A pod holds 32.
Okay.
I mean, very seldom are you going to run 32 in a pod, but this is what I wanted to get to. Their figures right now, they're saying it's $350 a day to board in. They're not using, first of all, they're not using the new jail's numbers, one. But let's just even play it out. Say it's $300 a day. Let's just say there's 70 inmates today. 35 are boarded out, 35 are boarded in. They're using the 35 and dividing it up to all the staffing that are in that jail to come up with the 300 number. If I bring the other 35 back, and let's say I have 11 or 12 inmates in each pod, and I double that now with the ones I bring back, I have no additional cost other than feeding them at this point. So all that basically drops that rate almost in half.
In half.
Right.
They're not discussing that.
Yep.
And then the bigger part of that, and they got all their numbers from Carl Streeter. I know you know who he is.
Carl Streeter.
I had a long conversation with him on Saturday.
Just so I can let people know who Carl. Carl is I think Carl's a very smart guy, and he's just a member of the community who I would think would fall into the category of watchdog, and he's always going over numbers. He's taking numbers from your website. That's where he's getting numbers from. You spoke to him over the weekend.
Yeah, he sent out a mass email on Saturday.
I have it.
Stating his. And you have that?
Yeah.
And you saw my response. Then if you had his, I responded to all.
Yes.
He's saying that 0.1% of the population is our jail population for the county residents that are placed in our jail. He's using 1 day's number of people that are put into our county jail, which is 66 or 70, depending on the day. And he's using that as the total number for the year. You can't do that. You have to have to compare to the population in the county. You have to have the number of individuals that are incarcerated throughout the whole year, not just for the day, which again helps his narrative.
Right.
And he did call me after that because he didn't send an email back, but he does state that his number was not correct. He said that he doesn't have the other number. Well, I said, well, just because you don't have a number doesn't mean you use another number that's supporting your narrative. And we went through this whole thing. He even agreed in our conversation that the cost of inboarding is cheaper. His argument is you still have to, but then you have to deduct the jail cost to build it. That's his argument.
Got it.
To run the day-to-day operations, he isn't disagreeing that it's $500,000 cheaper a year.
And
that's what he told me on Saturday.
All right, and then we're told that it will take you how long to pay off the jail? After building it.
Excuse me?
After you build this thing, how long will it take to pay it off? Because I think Jim Wallace was saying
I would say 5 to 6 years. I think Jim's
really
he said. Good with his numbers. I would support that. Our 0.25% sales tax that it's slotted just for the jail. It's not like we could take that money and go out and build something tomorrow other than the jail. That's what it's slotted for, and that was approved when we asked for the 0.25% by the state. But I mean, his that's about $1.75 million a year, give or take, depending on the year. So you take that, and nobody in the whole legislature is supporting a $40 million jail. I don't know why they keep throwing that number out there. That number has been whittled down to low 30s, and we keep trying to get it down.
I do believe that there are many people in Herkimer County who just say, for God's sakes, let's just get this thing built. This has been going on forever. People arguing back and forth. Let's get it built.
Well, the other problem you have, Bill, that's even past the numbers. You also have an issue with the safety part of transporting these inmates all over the state. That's a bigger fear of mine as well. I mean, you're driving them through bad weather. You're driving them. Anytime you're driving anybody that distance, you have a chance to have an issue.
Yeah.
And and that's going to be in upstate New York. The weather's not that good.
Right.
So you're going to have that's going to be a bigger issue yet. And when something happens because of that, I don't want to be the one. I mean, if all things being equal, I'm gonna side with Herkimer County. We're a debt-free county. We're one of the few that there is. We run very efficiently. I'd rather have control of all those things here.
All right. Here's another issue too, Kurt, that I just want you, before we break, I've got less than a minute, I just want you to hit on, and that is that we're also shipping some of these inmates out who are maybe in for minor reasons, but they're spending some time in jail. Maybe it's a family court issue, but we're sending them to some pretty bad places.
Well, that I wanted to address that too. I'm glad you brought it up. My former career, I was kind of in this field, so I know a little bit about it. There's some of these places. You're right. They're not Herkimer County Correctional Facility. They're a pretty bad place, and you don't want to see your neighbor, especially a 17, 18-year-old kid, being placed in some of these correctional facilities. There's a lot of them that have dormitory settings that there's 30, 40 inmates just in an open setting, and they have a lot more problems, let's say, than we do here.
All right.
And that could drive your cost up as well, because then when the person feels unsafe, they start making accusations to get themselves in isolation, which then causes the rate to go up again. Plus the fact that we don't want to see any of them go in and come out, with more problems than they went in with.
Kurt Ackerman is a legislator in Herkimer County. I know you're on your way on the road, and I appreciate you taking the time here this morning and laying this out for us. Thanks so much.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks, Bill.
Kurt Ackerman.